With data intervals freshly in mind, let's also recap the meaning of sigma, the standard deviation for the normal distribution. And because an animation says more than 1,000 words, let's look at one. Now this clearly shows that the value of sigma determines the spread of our normal distribution. But how do we now combine these two concepts? How do we convert between the standard deviation, which is a number, and the data interval, which is a pair of numbers or a data range with the corresponding percentiles? Well, all that you need to know is encapsulated in this one figure. So what is going on in this figure? Well, first of all, we see a histogram of a perfectly normally distributed population. And additionally, this histogram is centered around this dashed line, which is the mean and has a value of 0. Now what we also see is this smooth curve going along the shape of our histogram. And this is the corresponding probability density function. And yes, the PDF makes its re-entry in this chapter. Now, as a quick reminder, the probability density function is the smooth line that approximates the histogram if we would increase the number of bins indefinitely. And in this way, the PDF is a theoretical curve, but it will be very useful in what is to come. Now, all of the other elements in this graph are tied to the spread of our function and thus of very great importance to us in this lesson. We have all of these vertical dotted lines with an assigned percentage to them. Now, what do these lines actually indicate? Well, let's start with the vertical lines here that are closest to the mean of our distribution. These specific lines are the boundary of the roughly 68% data interval, or to be more precise, 68.26895% of all of our data lies within this region, bounded by these vertical lines. Now, why exactly this 68.26895%? What is the significance of such a precision? Well, this is where the link to the standard deviation or sigma comes into play. If we start at the center of our histogram, which is represented by the mean of our distribution, in our example with a value of 0, and we go 1 sigma to the left, and we go 1 sigma to the right, then we end up at exactly these vertical lines. So what does this then mean? It means that the data interval with a lower boundary minus sigma and an upper boundary plus sigma contains 68.26895% of our data. Now, to give you a concrete example, if sigma, or our standard deviation, is 0.5, then we know that roughly 68% of our data lies between minus 0.5 and plus 0.5. If, of course, the mean of our distribution is 0. Otherwise, we just add or subtract the mean to these numbers. And this is the link between sigma and our data intervals. And just to give you some more practice to let it sink in, let's look at this second data interval, which contains 95.44997% of all of our data. It is obtained by starting at the center of our histogram, going 2 sigma to the left, and 2 sigma to the right. That means that this percentage of data, roughly 95% of our data, lies between minus 2 sigma and plus 2 sigma. Again, in our example with sigma being 0.5, we then know that 95% of data lies between minus 1 and plus 1. And thus we see that the more sigmas that we deviate from our mean, the larger our data interval becomes. We see here that we have a data interval between minus 5 sigma and plus 5 sigma that we contain 99.99994% of all of our data. So basically all of our data. Now I hear you ask, why would we go through all of this trouble to get this link? Why would we even want these very precise data intervals in the first place? Well, the reason is because the normal distribution is so widespread across a very diverse set of fields. And therefore, a lot of people that use statistics will report their findings in terms of these sigma intervals. Now, in the course notes, I go through each different sigma level and discuss where it is used. But for instance, this 2 sigma level, this 95%, is used in the soft sciences, for instance, in psychology. There, if they do an experiment and they do the statistics to find out whether they made a discovery or not, if they then find a signal that is outside of this 2 sigma level, then they consider it as evidence. Now, on the other hand of the spectrum, we have the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012 at the LHC in Geneva. This event was published to be a 5 sigma discovery. Now, what does this mean? It means that given all of the collected data that was generated by smashing billions of particles together and that pointed in the direction of the existence of the Higgs boson, could only have been by pure luck in 0.00006% of the chances. So these physicists don't leave anything to chance in order to publish a discovery. Now, all of this information about bridging the gap between the sigma levels and the data intervals is encapsulated in this nice figure. So how do we now plot this figure? How do we make it? And how do we get these very precise percentages? Well, all of this is done in only one Python notebook cell. And let's see what this looks like. This first function that I defined is not even necessary at this point. It's for the next lesson where we will learn about the cumulative distribution function. So we can skip this for now. And we directly go to making the population, but also a sample. Again, we define a population size to be 100,000 and a sample size to be 100. Then we will define the theoretical values from which we will generate the normal populations. We have the mean being 0, the variance being 0.5, and the standard deviation being the square root of the variance, which we then round up to 3 decimals, and this will become 0.707. Then we generate our population. The normal population is np.random.normal, location being the mean, scale being the standard deviation, and a size of 100,000 points. The same can be done for the normal sample. Then we compute some statistics for our population and sample in the same way as we always do. The population mean, the population variance, the sample mean, and the sample variance. And then we will calculate the data interval. And for now, we will compute the 95% data interval. To do this, we need 95% of the bulk data. So we omit 5% of the most extreme data. Therefore, 2.5% at the top and 2.5% at the bottom we want to ignore. Therefore, the percentiles that we need are the 2.5 percentile and 97.5 percentile, which is what we define here. Then the lower percentile of our population is the np.percentile, normal population, and 2.5. Same for the upper percentile of our population, which will be numpy.percentile, normal population, and 97.5. Now, exactly the same, of course, for our sample. And this gives us the 2.5th and the 97.5th percentile. These we then can use to make our data intervals. Namely, each data interval is just going from the lower percentile to the upper percentile. And this is how we very quickly computed the basic statistics, now including the data interval, for both population and sample. And we want to bring them together in a data frame to just compare them. To do this, we first bring all of our data together in a dictionary, with the keys being theory, population, and sample. For the theory, we take the mean, variance, and standard deviation, which we use to generate our population and our sample. Now for the corresponding data interval, I put in these numbers manually. You can either look them up or generate them yourself by making a population size of 10 million or even more. Now for the population, we get the population statistics, and for the sample, we get the sample statistics. Now we bring this all together into a data frame by saying pandas.dataframe putting in our data, and as the index we have the mean, the variance, the standard deviation, and of course the percentile. Now if we do this and we run this cell, then we see that we indeed get a table at the bottom with all of these statistics that we now compute for each of these data sets. The theory one, the population, and the sample. And the exact same dynamics as before will also be visible here. If we run this cell multiple times, we will see that the sample statistics will vary widely because it has very few data points. The population statistics will be pretty robust, but still vary a little bit because it has much more data points. And the theory statistics, well, they are fixed because we made them so. But now we can see that also the data interval values will be subject to the same dynamics. But weren't we supposed to visualize this graph? Yes, well, let's do this right now. To visualize the graph from the slides, we need three ingredients. We need the histogram, the probability density function, and then everything connected to these data intervals and these sigma levels. So again, we make our figure and our axis. First, we plot the histogram of our population. Now this is very straightforward. We of course just use the hist function and we give it the normal population array. Then the xv line will represent the population mean that we computed. It will be exactly at the center of our distribution. Then we want to generate and plot the corresponding probability density function, which we will do in the following three lines. First, we define a minimum x value and a maximum x value, which we will use to generate the PDF. To do so, we take our x's and we get our x limits. This will give us a minimum limit and an upper limit. Then we define our x. Now x will be an array of linearly spaced values going from the minimum x, which is the first parameter, to the maximum x, which is the second parameter, and it will have exactly 100 elements. And then to plot the probability distribution, we simply plot a line plot. So we do x1.plot. On the x-axis, we want to have exactly this x that we just defined. Now the y value will be the probability density function, the actual shape of our line. Now this function, it will take in an x, which is the x-axis. It will need a mean for our probability density function, and it will need a standard deviation. And now we know that this indicates the spread of our distribution. These parameters we give to norm.pdf, which generates the numbers that represent the probability density function. It's basically a function. You put in an x and out comes a number. And these three lines then plot the probability density function on top of our histogram. And then we will come to the last element on our figure, which are these sigma levels, indicating the data intervals. Now, the color array will just be something that we will need later on in our for loop, because it's the for loop that actually makes all of the elements. Each iteration of the for loop corresponds to one sigma level. So we have I going from range from 1 to 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 sigma levels. For each iteration, we first want to draw the vertical lines indicating the bounds of our data interval. As always, a vertical line is drawn by .xv line. And the position, or the x position of this vertical line will be the first parameter. And in this case, we take the theoretical mean of our distribution, which is exactly 0, and we subtract from it I multiplied by the standard deviation. Now remember that the standard deviation is exactly 1 sigma. Now if we subtract 1 sigma from our mean, that means that we have 1 sigma away from our mean to the left-hand side. And this I will change from iteration to iteration. In the first iteration, it will be 1, so 1 standard deviation away from the mean. Then the second iteration, it will be 2, so 2 sigmas away, and then 3 sigmas away, and so on and so on. Then the corresponding line on the right-hand side of our mean will be the line below. Again, a vertical line where the position will be the mean, but now plus 1, 2, or 3 standard deviations, depending on the iteration in our for loop. And these two lines give us all of the vertical lines indicating the bounds of our data intervals. Now, to fill in the space between these lines, we go to the first line in our for loop. Here we again use the function fill between x. Now the first parameter is the lower and the upper y value of our filling rectangle, in this case 0 to 0.6. And the second and third parameters in this function indicate the bounds on the x-axis. So again, the same as the vertical lines. The left bound will be the mean, which is 0 in our case, minus I times 1 standard deviation. And the upper bound will be the mean plus I times the standard deviation. And thus these three lines take care of these different regions with these different bounds. But now, of course, we still want to figure out how we compute the corresponding percentages of these data intervals, which are 1 sigma, 2 sigma, 3 sigma, and so on. And to do this, we actually need some information that we will learn about in the next lesson, namely the cumulative probability function. But it just suffices to say that this function, stats.norm, because we're doing with a normal distribution, .cdf, and cdf will be the cumulative distribution function, computes the percentage of data in terms of sigma. Now, because I indicates the number in our for loop, so 1 sigma, 2 sigma, or 3 sigma, subtracting these two will compute the exact percentage of data that falls within the data interval of minus sigma to plus sigma, or minus 2 sigma to plus 2 sigma, and so on. And this is how we get these exact percentages. And then this last line is to print these percentages as a string onto our figure. Now, if you want more details about each line, of course, I refer you to the Code for Data Science YouTube channel and the corresponding video. Then we add a title to our histogram, we set a y label being the density, and we add a legend which contains all of the sigma levels, 5 sigma, 4 sigma, and so on and so on. And this is how we bridge the gap between, on the one hand, standard deviations or sigma levels and data intervals on the other hand. Now, in this lesson, we already encountered the cumulative distribution function a couple of times. Now, this is of course a very important function, and we will learn about it in detail in the next lesson.